say hi to everybody. This is so magical. I will give him the time to give you next tea ceremony. Okay. He's one of the top tea master in the world, I think. Yeah. He looks like Canadian people, but his inside has a lot of Chinese culture stuff. And he knows tea culture more than most of Chinese people, I believe so. And he can give us very professional seminar about the tea ceremony and the tea. I know him not very long time, about 2 years, yeah. But I recognize his knowledge and his experience is much higher level, and he can revive Song Dynasty's Diancha. Very few people in the world can make this. It's a very strong cultural background. People can do research and can make it be shown here. Okay.
Thank you very much, Julian, and welcome everybody to the Age of Literati Culture Festival. And just introduce myself. My name is Jeff Kovac. Thank you everyone. Really, 大家好，谢谢你们来我们的 very good weekend. 我也说一点中国话 but for this I have to speak to you in English. But I will talk to you a little bit about the Song Dynasty and a little bit about tea. A little bit about myself. I lived in China for many years where I really developed an interest in tea. I lived in Sichuan province in Chengdu where I had the honor of studying tea over there for several years before coming back to Canada and getting involved in the Canadian tea scene here, working for various tea companies as well. I also have my own little small tea company. I try to import rare and hard to find different types of teas. But that's something for another day. So what really is tea? Well, tea has seen many different changes throughout the history of China. The first major scholarly work that came out about tea was written by a gentleman by the name of Lu Yu. And Lu Yu was a famous writer during the Tang Dynasty. And he actually wrote the first treatise on tea during the Tang Dynasty, known as the Cha Jing. And basically, to tell you a little bit about Lu Yu, he was an orphan. He grew up in the monastic system, meaning in the different monasteries. He was an orphan. And Lu Yu was known as a bit of a comedian and showed a very vibrant side of himself at a very young age. Lu Yu essentially rebelled a little bit from the monastic system and wasn't interested in becoming a monk. But what's very interesting about tea and the culture of tea is how it spread across Asia. So as we all know, tea is a Chinese, tea comes from China. For many, many years there was a debate between India and China whether or not the original tea trees of Camellia sinensis originated in India or China. I think it was about 25 years ago, sorry I don't have the exact date, that they actually found the correct fossil records to date that the original tea trees did come and start and spread out from Yunnan in Yunnan, China. So tea is a Chinese product. It is a Chinese, it goes back 4,000 years into the cultural history of China. And what's interesting about, originally tea or cha was seen as traditional Chinese medicine. Going back 4,000 years ago, it was used in the alchemy for clearing up, it was eaten in southern Yunnan by different natives as traditional medicine. Obviously tea is a stimulant. It's very good for keeping you awake. Going back thousands of years in the Chinese pharmacology, doctors realized that tea also was good for digestion. So when I look at the historical timeline of tea, I kind of start in the Tang Dai and the Tang Dynasty. Prior to the Tang Dynasty, I think tea was mostly seen as a medicinal medicine. Because we have to remember, while we enjoy tea and we love tea, it is something that comes out of the ground. So and I think it has to sort of be treated with respect. But when I start to talk about tea, I kind of start in the Tang Dynasty. We have before Tang Dynasty, and we have after Tang Dynasty. The reason why we do that is because it wasn't until Lu Yu essentially disappeared up in the mountains and studied the Camellia sinensis tea bush. He studied the different production methods of tea. And he studied health benefits, and mostly what's most important about Lu Yu is that he also studied water. Because without tea, without water, they're so intertwined together and very, very important. So, historically, tea is a Chinese thing. It's 100% China. The best teas in the world come from China. So how did tea spread from China? It was through Fojiao, or Buddhism. The reason why tea spread outwards from China was because of Buddhism. The Japanese, during the Tang Dynasty, the relationships with China were strong. And at that time, Japan would send monks over to China to study Zen, to study Buddhist philosophies, Taoist philosophies. And the monks in China realized the medicinal properties of tea in terms of staying alert. So basically, the monks would go into a deep meditation when they were praying, but a lot of the times they would fall asleep. So when they realized, the monks, when they drank tea, it allowed the mind to stay alert, and it allowed the body to stay calm. So they could go into these deep meditations in the temple and not fall asleep. So when times were good between China and Japan, Japanese would come over to China to study Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, all these arts, and took that back to China. So originally, going back to the different dynasties, the Tang Dynasty is Lu Yu's time when he developed cultivation methods, studied that, preparation methods. Lu Yu had 21 different implements that were required for producing tea, from creating a fire, from preparing water. I think Lu Yu even commented that the best water for tea was high mountain spring water, which they actually collected off of bamboo shoots and bamboo leaves. The reason why they collected the best water off of bamboo leaves because Lu Yu commented that the bamboo added a sweetness to the water. So we're going back to the Tang Dynasty when already the Chinese are developing and have an understanding of what is the best type of water for tea. So to wrap up the little bit differences about the dynasties, so Lu Yu's method of making tea was a boiled and stirred method. So they would essentially make these cakes, they would roast them, steam them, pound them, grind them into a powder, and if you look over here, this here we call a brazier. So traditionally with tea, a charcoal fire would be prepared in here with mutan, or charcoal, and it would be laid in a very specific way, and then you would create your fire, and you would have your pool over here to contain and boil the water. Thank you. So Lu Yu was the first one to write down, study, and develop the different tools that were required to do the Tang Dynasty style of tea. So again, his method was a stirred method. You would throw the tea powder into your kama or your iron pot. You would take your chopstick, stir it, bring the tea up to a boil, at which point you would throw in some spices, some ginger, something like that, orange rind, orange peel, and you would stir it, and make your bowl of tea. Tea at that time in the Tang Dynasty and Song Dynasty was drank out of a bowl, chawan. It wasn't drank from a cup. So, interestingly, as we move, at the end of the Tang Dynasty, relations between Japan and China kind of broke apart. The Japanese weren't sending people to study tea in China, and at the end of the Tang Dynasty brought in, which was the Song Dynasty. And the Song Dynasty is known for celebrating the 4 arts of life. The 4 arts of life in the Song Dynasty was calligraphy, shufa, it was cha, zuo cha. In Song Dynasty we say song dai dian cha, which was the Song way of tea. As earlier I tried to put a smile on everybody's faces, the 3rd art was incense, appreciation. And the last one was flower arranging. So during the Song Dynasty, these 4 arts of life, these 4 ways of life, tea, calligraphy, flowers, and incense, during the Song Dynasty, what's very interesting is that relations between Japan and China became good again during the Song Dynasty. And I believe it was in the 11th century when Japan sent a monk by the name of Eisai, who then returned back to Japan with the original tea seeds. And at this point in Japan, they started to cultivate tea. But what's very interesting when we look at the parallels between the Songdai Dian Cha and the Ruben Cha, the Japanese tea, is that everything you see in the Japanese tea ceremony today, the foundation is the Songdai Dian Cha. So, what I can also introduce to you a little bit is about the different tea implements of the Songdai. So you would have had your bamboo whisk. The way of making the tea in the Song Dynasty was a stirred method, and we say whipped tea. We would whip the tea into a powder. So we would have our bamboo whisk. We would also have our tea scoop for scooping the tea, a powdered tea. Most importantly, and what was really interesting about the Song Dynasty is in Fujian province, all of these types of glaze, these tenmoku tea bowls, and with these very rich glazes started to come out of the Song Dynasty. And we call this jianware, or rabbit's fur glaze. So, in the Song Dynasty, the art of tea really came into the forefront. Also, we would have our tea containers, which we would keep our powdered tea inside. But during the Song Dynasty, as opposed to the Tang Dynasty, is when the very high arts movement of tea started to flourish. So, Yanyan invited me here, which I'm very happy to be here. We thought maybe we could do a little bit of a demonstration of Songdai Dian Cha. And she is going to play some music from the Song Dynasty. And the one thing that two more things to introduce. This would be for our wastewater. So after we're finished making tea, this would kind of be like our lachi garbage water. We would throw that away. This is a cold water pot. This is where we would keep our cold water for going into our tetsubin. And I would say the trademark piece of the Song was our hot water ewer, and this will be poured into the chawan with hot water to make our Songdai Dian Cha. So, what I'll do is, I guess we will prepare a bowl of tea, and maybe at the end, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to. I wish we had a translator, but if you had any questions, I would be happy to answer them for you. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Welcome, and
So next section is Jeff. He's going to prepare a bowl of Songdai style Dian Cha. So I will play music when he's doing his preparing.
I prepared a bowl of tea for Zhu Yanyan. Little bit about, very quickly, how the tea was made. I actually made that myself. The Songdai tea was essentially from the premise of the Tang Dynasty. The tea would have been put into cakes, steamed, and pressed into cakes or bricks, which we call gentry. Which was different from the Tang, is they were roasted a little bit more heavily. And the reason why we know that the tea was roasted is because in the Song Dynasty they talk about the creamy white clouds. And the only way that the tea would have produced a creamy white cloud is if it would have been heavily roasted. So the tea would have been picked, it would have been steamed, it would have been pressed into cakes, and then roasted. At which point after, with these bricks and cakes of tea, they would have been pounded. They would have been pounded, and after that they would have been milled with a rolling pin. And then after that, it would have been milled in a stone mill and ground into a fine powder. After being ground into a powder, the actual tea would then have been sifted to take out any bits and pieces, and then after that it would have been put into the tea caddy and prepared for tea. Okay? So you can take a look. What's really interesting, again, this is a little bit different from more mocha or Japanese powdered green tea. But I always find it interesting at how matcha green tea is so popular now. And unfortunately, as the Song Dynasty went away and was replaced by the Yuan Dynasty, that most of this tradition has gone away. But it's very interesting. You still see, I think you can feel a lot of it in modern Japanese tea. But so this is something that I got interested in maybe a few years ago, and thought it would be interesting to try to sort of revive. Okay? If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. But thank you so much for having us here today.
By the way, we have some black tea in our kitchen. If you'd like to drink some tea over there, we have the black tea in the kitchen. Small cups over there. Mrs. Liu, she's helping you to have some tea to taste, but it's different. Yeah, black tea is from many years we call cha ma ba. In the border area, like in Mongolian, like Xinjiang area, Tibetan, they drink this kind of tea because they press there and they're easy to deliver, and they get burned during time. And this is only one nutrition from minerals and vitamins for those people from the grasslands. Like in Mongolia, they do not have veggies and fruits. They only drink tea for their nutrition about vitamins and minerals. And this black tea from China, from Yunnan province, from Fujian province, from Hunan to Shaanxi province, those areas can provide the tea resources for this, but they are cost a lot to deliver to there. So they have to, for exchange, they use their horses. Horses is very expensive too. They have to use their horses for change the tea and salt for their nutrition resources, right? So Song Dynasty's 点菜 is too expensive, not affordable to do so. So black tea is cheaper, but nowadays people treat any kind of tea as their nutrition. So help yourself to have some tea in our kitchen. This is for our section for tea ceremony and teaching. After an hour, we have another section, calligraphy. So you're welcome to come back to have tea and have fun